Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to another episode of Welcome to the Wasteland. And this is a special episode as we're taking a little bit of a break from Martin Scorsese, because if you have been watching all of these videos, who did I start off with? The Coen brothers. And the Coen brothers, well, one of them, Joel Coen, has a new film, The Tragedy of Macbeth, so we're doing a special episode, and I have my fiancée here, Jess, who's also a huge fan of the Coen brothers, joining me, so thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
You excited?
Good to be here.
She's very, very excited to be here to talk about The Tragedy of Macbeth. But how the show works, we have 3 segments. We have Coming Attractions, our feature film, which obviously is The Tragedy of Macbeth, and as well as our recommendations. So we're going to get things started with our Coming Attractions for Friday, January 14th, 2022, because my God, it's 2022.
And also January.
It's also January, so F you. It's January. But Jess, what's your most anticipated film?
I believe that when you debriefed me before this, I said Hotel Transformania. Transformania.
Yes, Hotel Transylvania. Transformania.
Kind of slim pickings in January.
That is very true. It's becoming
all good.
I really
not great.
Yeah.
But good. Enjoyable.
Yeah, I think all the Hotel Transylvania movies are quite enjoyable, but they're not great movies. They also have a lot of lowbrow humor and stuff like that. But by the time this episode does drop, the embargo will be lifted and we've actually seen it, which it's a fun time. Adam Sandler's definitely missed, and so's Genndy Tartakovsky as a director, but they still have some fun. And I think if you need a surefire, just inoffensive, silly, animated movie to watch with people, it's hard to go wrong with Hotel Transylvania.
Agreed.
Now, my pick for this week, since I'm doing 2 shows, I'm going to save Scream and talk about that one for the other one. But I'm also excited about a new anime called Belle that's coming out, which deals with virtual reality, and it looks really interesting visually, and honestly, I've kind of been spending a lot of time with the idea of virtual reality after I just read Ubik by Philip K. Dick, which you can check out that review because it's only my 2nd book review that I've ever done. So look, spreading things out in 2022, but it looks like an interesting ride. I'm hoping for a screener. I don't know where that would even show up if it came out in theaters around here, so we're going to find out. But so, got a couple animated films. There's quite a bit. This is the biggest weekend in terms of releases for January. And originally, they had the Sesame Street movie on the release date schedule that hasn't even released a trailer or anything. And it has Anne Hathaway in it. But then mysteriously last week it moved. I don't know. It would have been interesting, but we got Hotel Transylvania, Transformania, Scream, Belle, this new anime, and quite a few other films, including the film that we're about to talk about, coming out on Apple TV Plus, is The Tragedy of Macbeth. So Joel Coen go off on his own. Ethan Coen's focusing more on doing stage plays and stuff like that, which is very interesting, seeing as his brother just made a movie that feels a lot like a stage play.
Yeah.
But so Jess, what interests you in coming on to talk about The Tragedy of Macbeth for this episode?
I like period pieces. They're cool.
So period pieces. What else?
It was very aesthetic looking.
It is
It's
indeed.
cool. They did a good job getting everybody to show up on film too, because I know it's really difficult because a lot of technology is racist and doesn't show people of different skin tones the same. But everybody was very striking. Everybody's face was very clearly.
Which this is a very interesting film because it's not a very traditional adaptation of Macbeth either. Because one, it's not 2.5 hours. This is an hour and 45 minutes. This is Macbeth abridged.
I didn't feel like we needed those extra parts though.
Honestly, I've seen...
Not an expert on Macbeth.
I've only seen one film version of Macbeth, and it was Roman Polanski's version, which was also co-produced by Hugh Hefner and Playboy, which is interesting. But I remember that one being a big, epic creepy, like, period epic from Shakespeare. Like, this is, like, streamlined. Here's the main pieces that you need, and get into it. And I think that's an interesting approach to it. But from a visual standpoint, the black and white is striking. And I even made a comment while we were watching it with every single man, for the most part, in this film is, like, salt and peppery. And boy, does that gray, like, pop on screen. Especially when they showed Denzel up close for the first time. And it's just like, dang. He's really rocking it. And
to be fair, there's only, like, 2 women.
You have Macduff's wife, Lady Macbeth, and I guess the witches.
I mean,
right?
the witches, and there's, like, a maid, or a servant lady.
Yeah. So, 2 times as many as you
So
actually said,
4.
Jess.
Well, there's 3 witches, so.
Oh, well, and that's an interesting choice that they made in this film, too, is that Catherine Hunter plays the witches, and she's the only one that really, like, pops up.
Well, they're all her.
Yeah.
Because they kind of...
And because how they introduce that whole sequence is really cool, because you have Macbeth and Banquo walking up to, like, this little pond, and you have Catherine Hunter on the other side of this pond, and she's standing there, and the reflection in the water, you see the reflections of the 2 other witches, which is really interesting and visually striking, especially in the black and white. And then all of a sudden they, like, phase up, and then there's the 3 of them standing there, and then crows! Because...
Hell yeah, there's a lot of crows.
There's a lot of crows.
Crow to people ratio in the movie.
And on top of that, there's quite a few crow jump scares, especially at the very end of the movie.
There are jump scares in this movie.
Yes, and a decent chunk of them have to do with crows.
I mean, birds are scary. They're unpredictable.
Well, and especially because, like,
they have no God.
I think what's interesting about this, too, is the sound design in the film. Because, like, those crows, when they show up, it's... You hear them, and it's, like... Because they have a very distinct sound to them, and it's really creepy. And I think one of my favorite pieces of this film is... This sounds strange, but the use of, like, droplets of blood and water. Because there's one particular one, which this was fantastic filmmaking. Because, you know, spoiler alert for a William Shakespeare play, which, spoiler alert, 90% of the people get murdered in this movie. So, surprise. But you have King Duncan when Macbeth murders him and goes back into his chamber, and Lady Macbeth, which, greatest side eye in 2021. Frances McDormand kills that stare as she's like, fine, I'll do it myself.
Just some pretty good tantrums.
Yeah, and there's one point where it shows Duncan's dead body. A droplet of blood falls, and it's like, it's one of those kind of sound effects, and then bam, a cut to Lady Macbeth's face, and you see Frances McDormand. I'm like, damn. That's some classy editing and filmmaking and sound design. If you can say anything, I think this is probably one of the most unique, technically created Shakespeare adaptations. Because you have the black and white, which isn't really saying, like, much, because, like, you know, a lot of Olivier Macbeth adaptations are in black and white, because, like, that's, like, classy. 40s, 50s time period. And it also kind of does what those films did, too, in terms of, like, this never feels fully like a film or fully like a play. It's some weird, minimalist middle ground at points. And then you have the sound design, you have the music, which is both period accurate and also so Carter Burwell. If you've watched any Coen Brothers movie and you have score, because, like, I preface that because, you know, No Country for Old Men barely has any music in it. But Carter Burwell, you could definitely tell it's him, and just how it's all put together, it's a very unique look. There's shots that are extremely symmetrical, and it feels very unnatural. But then that's an interesting contrast with how grounded and intense the performances are. And it's a strange mix of play and film, and it really worked for me. I love this movie, if you couldn't tell. But what are some of the things that really stood out to you, Jess?
They used a lot of stuff that's like, so the leaves is one thing that stuck out to me. They were clearly fake leaves, but it made it feel more like a play. Or like if you notice, like, I guess it's the camera angle. Like, I know there's something called, I don't know too much about cameras. I'm a psychology major, all this other stuff. The tilt shift that makes things look like miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen that? Like,
Yeah.
I think the way that they had the camera configured, it kept it focused on the foreground, so it kind of looked like they had backgrounds that looked like they were painted.
Yeah. Which I'm pretty sure some of them probably were.
Some of them, yeah, I'm sure that they were. The trees looked like trees, but they weren't photorealistic trees.
Mm-hmm.
Like the branches that they carry. Again, spoilers for a 700-year-old play.
Yes, because like that
600-year-old play, however many.
When the trees are walking and they're like covered with the trees, they look like somebody bought them from like Joanne Fabrics or something like that.
I mean, it's clearly fake branches, but then there's other stuff like the visions that he sees that are clearly like they look like actual people in a puddle. I mean, obviously not, but they're photorealistic is my point. They're not just, someone holding up someone's face painted look ghosty. Like Shane said, the sound design was really cool. It sounded like a castle. I mean, it's been a while since I've been in a castle, COVID and all, I haven't been overseas.
Because we just chill in
it sounds it sounds like a castle, like I remember them sounding.
Which I think the lighting in the castle works so well, because one of the best scenes in the play in general and this film, is this a dagger I see you before me?
Yeah, classic.
And you have how the camera is. Denzel Washington, who is an amazing Macbeth, because it's Denzel, is all the way down the hall to your right. The camera's angled where it's not like straight down the hallway, but it's kind of angled, and you have the lighting coming through, and you see that on the ground, and he's like walking down the hall towards, and there's like, it had to be the lighting, because there was a specific way the light was reflecting off his eyes that made him look like a little demonic at that point, and it's just like, dang.
Well, I think the light showed the daggery type of image in his eyes.
Mm-hmm. And you see him walking towards it, and Denzel getting like Denzel intense, because there was a couple of times where I was waiting for him to just start like riling up right out of like training day.
I mean, he did throw a pretty good tantrum at one point.
Mm-hmm. Especially as the film goes on, he becomes more unhinged, which makes sense because that's part of the story, because especially towards the beginning, it's like, you know what, this is going to sound funny and you're not going to know exactly what I'm referencing here because Coen brothers, but when Macbeth comes back to his chamber and Lady Macbeth is giving him a bunch of shit about like, you gotta take care of the job, Frances McDormand was channeling, "Where's the money?" to Brad Pitt in Burn After Reading. It's like, when he comes back to the car and his nose is bleeding, she's like, "Where's the money?" He's like, "He didn't give it to me." It kind of felt like that kind of energy, because she could have that, like, powerful maternal figure just being like, "Why didn't you do what you were supposed to do?" And it's just like, because I couldn't. And you
definitely wasn't funny though.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't supposed to be played for laughs in this moment, but like
wasn't a lot of funny moments.
Yeah, basically similar to Shakespeare, you have comic relief characters, and Stephen Root's gonna pop up in this and be like
one moment.
Some like drunken,
literally one scene. He's a porter.
Yeah, just like at one point even like ugh, and falls flat on his face.
That's it. And
Stephen Root doesn't necessarily feel like he would fit in a medieval castle because it's Stephen Root, but like it fits so well because like this feels like a Coen Brothers movie. Who was I talking to? I think I was talking to my friend Vinny about this. There was something about some of the shots that reminded me a lot of 1, Lady Killers, 2, Hail Caesar.
How dare you?
What?
Bring those up.
I love Hail Caesar. Low-key love Hail Caesar. Not one of my top Coen Brothers films, but after I rewatched it, I got a lot more appreciation for it. Lady Killers is, by all means, their 2 lowest for me, along with Hudsucker Proxy. And Hudsucker Proxy was just like, I don't know, I never really felt connected to it. Lady Killers, on the other hand, is objectively just like a bit of a misfire. And I will argue with anybody about Intolerable Cruelty because that movie is an absolute delight.
At least it's fun.
It's so fun. But, like, I mean, like, there's specific special effects shots in Coen Brothers movies look strange and oddly artificial. Which, obviously, your goal for special effects is to not make them look artificial, but, you know, a lot of times they do. Which, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but I saw somebody do a tweet yesterday about how it excites them about one movie franchise, what makes them disappointed about all others today is you can look back at the Pirates of the Caribbean movies and look how good the special effects are, and then look at something from 2021 and be like, why does Davy Jones look so much better than this? Which, it's very true, because, like, the one shot they had of Davy Jones, I'm like, that looks like a real squid face. But the thing is, that's the thing is, like, Lady Killers has an odd amount of CGI in it at points, because there's large sections, especially with, like, the barge sequence and the bridge, that are CGI. Don't know why. I think it was an aesthetic choice. But when they use the special effects in this film, it feels the same kind of way, except, you know, this is in black and white, so it looks a little crisper and less fake looking, I guess. Because, like, there's points where, even in Ballad of Buster Scruggs, they use special effects, because, you know, like, Tim Blake Nelson didn't start flying up to the sky after he got shot, kind of thing. But, like, it's it feels like, I don't know, old-timey or something like that. It's hard to explain the specific look to it, but every time I've seen, like, a CGI shot in a Coen Brothers movie, I'm like, it looks like a CGI shot from a Coen Brothers movie, which makes sense, because, you know, I don't think they've changed too much. Yeah, and a lot of the times they do most of their stuff in camera, and you can tell. And it just, I guess it's a little odd when you do see a CGI shot in it. And, like, this film, most of it is very much in camera because they're on a set. And you can tell the whole film shot on a set.
I think it's intentional, though.
Yeah, and it's specifically that way. And it feels like, it doesn't quite feel like Kenneth Branagh 90s Macbeth that feels like you're in an actual castle. This feels like somebody made a castle for you to shoot in, and it worked for me because the look that it was going for is that. And I think to talk about the cast more, too, who are some of your standouts in the movie?
Well, definitely, who's the lady that played the witch?
Oh, Catherine Hunter, who's getting a lot of Oscar attention. I said she reminded me of Gollum when she got introduced because...
I mean, she's a contortionist, isn't she? She was popping joints all over the place.
Yep, and...
Which is pretty cool.
She had a very guttural voice to her. Fun fact, she's in a Harry Potter movie. Specifically, I think it's Order of the Phoenix. She plays the neighbor of Harry who sees him fight a Dementor in the Muggle world. So, Harry Potter fans out there. But the thing is, she has, like, that really gravelly, like, croaking voice that works really well for her to be, like, this otherworldly being, like a witch.
Yeah, she was cool. And Denzel, of course. Masterful.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with Denzel, and I really hope... Well, this is always a tricky thing. Every time the Oscars roll around, it's like, oh, I really hope they get a Best Actor nomination. And then I look, I'm like, I said 10 people I hope get a Best Actor nomination.
How many nominations are there?
There are only 5, so that's not going to work. But the thing is, I think Denzel really does deserve it. And also, if he loses, they better put the camera at his face. Because the look on his face when Casey Affleck beat him for Fences was priceless. Wasn't as priceless as Michael Keaton putting his notes back in his pocket, which was like really sad.
I don't like seeing people lose.
He lost to Eddie Redmayne for The Theory of Everything, and he was nominated for Birdman. But like, I want to see Denzel get nominated for an Oscar, and he was great in this. Frances McDormand was great in this, and from what it sounded like, she was the one who really wanted to make this because she had played Lady Macbeth before on stage, and you know, she's like to her husband Joel Coen, like, can you make this for me? And he's just like, sure.
Why even be married to a director if you can't get them to make movies you want to see?
Exactly.
Why even do it?
And I would like to think that he just said yes with no emotion at all. Because to be honest, I don't think I've ever sat and watched an interview with the Coen brothers. But every time I see a picture of them, they just look sad. Or just like completely muted of all emotions. Fun fact, which I don't think I brought this up to you because I was looking through to write my review. So there's one particular character that I thought was Lennox, but it wasn't Lennox. Lennox was a different character. That was a tricky thing, was keeping track of all the characters in this. But it was Ross, who was like guy with like the crazy sleeves guy.
Oh, yeah.
Is also Vicious from the Cowboy Bebop show on Netflix. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I can see that.
Which take away like the long like white blonde hair and give him like, he had like the most perfectly trimmed beard in this movie, and everybody else has like, Denzel has like salt and pepper
Rugged.
thick beard, and like,
I mean, they're trim, but they're not.
and you have like
sharp.
Brendan Gleeson, which is like
Yeah, this
that
was pretty
big
scruffy.
full bushy beard. But like Alex Hassel, who played Ross, I thought was really interesting, and he was one of the most like morally ambiguous characters because he was definitely like the Varys Littlefinger kind of character who's kind of on the side, being like, I'm gonna go where the power is.
Power behind the throne.
You have Bertie Carvel, who was Banquo. I thought he did a really fine job.
Classic.
Corey Hawkins, who played Macduff, was nice. Good for Harry Melling, who honestly might be one of the biggest breakout stars of Harry Potter, oddly, who played Dudley Dursley.
Oh, yeah, he's the weird-looking guy.
Who is Malcolm in this. He was the...
Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yeah, he was the one without arms and legs with Liam Neeson. And he's...
Meal ticket.
Yup, the meal ticket. Specifically that part of the anthology. And, like, he was in the Queen's Bandit. Queen's Gambit. And he's doing really well for himself. And in general, this was a really great cast. I have to give a shout out to Ralph Ineson, who was from The Witch and The Green Knight, who literally just pops up at the beginning of the movie to deliver exposition, and you're just like, wow, he was the perfect person for them to give exposition in a Shakespeare adaptation. And I was just waiting for 1 year. And
Yeah, he has a pretty cool voice, though.
he has a very deep, distinct voice, and like he literally pops up for like 3 minutes,
So
and then he's
September.
gone. So in general, this isn't going to surprise you narratively, except for the fact that it is a
Shakespeare.
trimmed down version of Shakespeare. There's some surprisingly good fight scenes in this movie towards the end. I'm like, dang, this is pretty cool. And then
they cut down on politics and beefed up the fight scenes. What we want.
And which is interesting from a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah.
Wouldn't expect that, but like how Macbeth gets done in though, he get like. And it's so great and so pitch perfect when he gets distracted to pick up his own crown, is about to put it back on, and Macduff just like yeets his head off with a sword, and he goes like head flying off of the castle that he's on. And then of course Ross just shows up with his head like this, and he's just like, dude, why are you just carrying around this
it's worse because he has it by the throat, and he's just carrying it by the neck.
It's just like, dude, you have like blood all over you. It's like, what's your problem?
You can't really, I mean, he just, I guess to prove that he's dead. I mean, because it's not like you could take a picture and show people.
And like, I don't remember, I haven't read Macbeth in a long time. Because I have a whole entire Barnes & Noble leather-bound classic of all of Shakespeare, and I read through all of them. I don't know if that one's up here or downstairs, and I haven't watched the movies since high school, because that's where I watched it, and damn, those witches were naked. And they were all, like, old lady from The Shining naked.
Whatever. Let them live.
Well, Roman Polanski did let them live, all just chilling in there, and there was like a fleet of them. There wasn't even just like 3 witches, it was like a whole entire What do you call a group of witches?
Coven.
I knew that. There's a whole coven of witches and they're all naked. And it's just like, in high school, as like a teenager just being like, why are there all these naked old ladies?
Romeo and Juliet.
We also watched that too.
There's some titties in that.
Oh, the 90s version?
Mm-hmm.
We watched the 50s or 60s version.
No, we watched the one with Leo.
We watched the older one, where Juliet's topless for like a hot second.
There's titties in that too.
And like hot second, and my teacher, Miss McNamee, was like, if you turn away, I am not rewinding this. So if you're gonna complain about this later, be paying attention to the movie. Which was hilarious.
She's a real pro.
But like, this is a very visually unique, but it was an interesting ending because you had Ross, who still was like hiding out Banquo's son, who by prophecy is also supposed to become king, rides off with him, and then that like murder of crows just like starts spiraling towards the camera and that giant jump scare, and like that's how the movie ends.
I mean, that was her prediction.
Exactly, and
their prediction, I guess.
It's basically like sequel. Because that's how we all think now.
History, I think at that point.
But Jess, do you have any other thoughts about the Tragedy of Macbeth?
That about covers it, considering I thought it was Hamlet half the time. I'm not great.
Hey, we could watch the 4-hour Kenneth Branagh
is that the one
Hamlet.
where Mel Gibson clearly wants to fuck his mom?
No,
I've seen
that is the Mel Gibson version. Kenneth Branagh directs and stars as Hamlet.
That's probably classier.
Oh, it is classy AF.
We watched the other one and we were like, visibly uncomfortable.
Brian Blessed as the ghost of Hamlet's father with his big booming voice. The acting in that movie is just off the charts. And then Charlton Heston is the father that leads the acting group. And when he's like going all Charlton Heston, I'm like, oh my god.
No, I've never seen that one.
Oh, it's great. But it is a 4-hour investment.
But it's not Macbeth.
No, it's Hamlet. The only Macbeth I've seen is the Roman Polanski one, which I thought was a really good movie. And then for the movie club, so checking out for the next episode of Val and Hell podcast, we're going to be talking about Throne of Blood, which is an Akira Kurosawa Macbeth adaptation in feudal Japan with samurai.
I will know that now. I'll remember that, probably.
Yep, as we're watching it.
I probably won't.
You know what's going to be funny is we're going to be sitting there watching it. You're going to be like, this is like Macbeth.
Yeah, I'm probably going to
be like, it is Macbeth. So, but that's a Tragedy of Macbeth. So we're going to wrap up here with our last segment, which is recommendations. So what's a movie or TV show you would like to recommend to these fine folks, Jess?
I'm going to go with, since I don't remember what I told earlier during the briefing, He-Man, or no, it's not He-Man, just Masters of the Universe. I thought it was
Revelations.
Revelations. I've never seen any of them before. I've just seen clips. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was some silly 80s camp, and I appreciate that they didn't change Fisto's name. I talked about that with one of my coworkers, Jake, who is a really huge fan of He-Man, and he,
one of my friends from
discussed that. I appreciate that.
Austin specifically brought up that one line that Fisto said.
I want to fist him. It just...
Kevin Smith had fun with
maybe
this.
one day He-Man and Skeletor will just kiss and it'll be over.
And then the world will end because wokeness has taken over.
Just a little more right on the end of the nose. Well, he doesn't have a nose, but...
Because he's a skeleton.
Right in his little skull.
So here's the thing. I know this show pissed off a lot of people. Because it focused on female characters.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else. Yeah.
Oh. I wasn't going to spoil any of the plot.
No. I thought you were going to talk about a different show, and I was like... thinking that was very topical, but you're still talking about...
Oh, no, I'm still talking about Masters of the Universe. A lot of people got really pissed off, and it was interesting because Kevin Smith said he wished that Netflix didn't split the season into... Which, to be perfectly honest, I think would have reduced a lot of it. But still, there's a big spotlight on the female characters in the show, including Lita Headey, Cersei Lannister.
I still can't believe her name is Evelyn.
You were just talking about a man named Fisto. Come on.
Well, that's when I was talking to Jake. I'm like, are you fucking serious? Fisto and Evelyn? And he goes, it was the 80s.
Who was the one, like, the witch hat looking little...
Oh, Orko.
Yeah, who I'm pretty, like, we decided that his spells don't work unless he rhymes.
Yeah, that's why I was...
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably a legitimate role. You're talking about a place with a dude named Fisto and Beast Man or whatever, where she's like, are you more man or beast? So there.
Well, and to be fair, his name is He-Man.
Yeah.
He-Man!
They wanted to sell really buff men toys.
And Skeletor.
I mean...
Which, Mark Hamill...
I wouldn't though. They lean into it. They don't try to take it too seriously.
Oh, no, they definitely...
They know what it is.
They know exactly what this is. And Kevin Smith knew exactly what this is.
Oh, yeah.
He updated some things and focused on some different characters. And, like, here's the thing. I have no connection to He-Man at all, because this was the first thing I ever watched of He-Man, so...
I just really, like, there was a documentary I watched about that, which I enjoyed.
Now it's like, do I go and watch the... Because, was Dolph Lundgren in He-Man? Masters of the Universe movie?
Was there a live-action movie?
Yeah, with Frank Langella as Skeletor.
I don't know.
I think it was Dolph Lundgren. Which, who would look...
I mean,
yeah. Who are you going to get in the
How
80s to be He-Man? Besides Arnold. If they got
already
Arnold...
Conan.
Yeah, He-Man versus Conan the Barbarian.
You gotta pick a muscular man.
Let's do it. Jess was going to say the Tender Bar.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed that movie.
Which world famous actor turned director George Clooney directed. George Clooney directed this, and Ben Affleck's getting a lot of Oscar buzz.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Christopher Lloyd is a grumpy old man who farts in people's general direction. Like his daughter. And, you know, it's a pretty sweet, and it has one of the best dad rock soundtracks I've heard all year.
Oh, yeah.
The second they started the movie with Radar Love by Golden Earring, just could attest I was singing along to, like, a decent amount of songs while watching the movie.
Yeah.
Dancing in the Moonlight I definitely started singing to. So that's on Amazon right now. So some of my recommendations specifically...
Oh, you picked more than one? Oh boy, did you.
No, so what I do... For those who have watched this before, I pick one new film that's a new release that I want to recommend. I pick one of my movies if I've watched one in the past week.
It's a format.
And then I pick one of my watch list movies if I've actually watched one in the past week. Which a lot of times it only turns out to be one because I hadn't watched a whole lot of my movies or watch list movies until I was off for break. Which we watched a decent amount of them.
Which
so
we spent half in quarantine.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, I spent most of my time watching movies anyway, but there were things I would have liked to go out and do. I was going to get a haircut. Which obviously I have not. So, one I just got... So, this was released on VOD last year, but is coming out on DVD and Blu-ray that I just rewatched last night, is Emma. And this is from director Pedro Larraín, who just did Spencer. And also did the film Jackie with Natalie Portman as Jackie Kennedy. Those two films are very unique and haunting biopics. And this is definitely not a biopic. It is a strange mixture of a musical, and a very intense, relationship drama with Emma, the titular character, and her husband Gaston, who's actually played by Gael Garcia Bernal, who is a fantastic veteran Mexican actor. And you have them... One, struggling as the choreographer and one of the lead dancers of this troupe, which they do some great reggaeton in this. Like, could just watch this movie for the dance sequences, because they're striking and amazing. And then you have a bunch of sex scenes, too, that carry the same kind of energy, which including there's a really intense... long lesbian orgy at a party. I'm just like, this movie is off the chain.
I mean, women take longer to orgasm, so...
It was like, there was one particular woman and it just had a whole, like, there was like a good 8 other ones, like, kissing all over her. I'm just like, I remember watching it the first time being like,
Nice.
oh my god, this movie's going there. But this isn't just a bunch of dancing and sex. It is a really intense human drama, too. And them dealing with the fact that their adopted son got taken away because he's a little pyromaniac. And they were considered unfit parents. And all of that drama. There's a lot of drama in this movie. This is a intense, extremely well acted, and extremely well directed film. It's not going to be for everybody. But if what I just told you made you interested and piqued your interest, you have to go check this out. My next one is one of my films back here, which is The Time Machine, and not the 2002-ish one with Guy Pearce in it, where they turned it into a big action movie and had Jeremy Irons play the Uber Morlock. No, this is the 1960s Rod Taylor, The Time Machine.
What a name.
Which Rod Taylor, great movie star, was in The Birds and this, and I think he's a great protagonist. He really, it feels like it is, and you can attest, you watched it with me, it's a very old school kind of sci-fi. There's tons of
Just like,
well, to be fair, the
woman.
book was written in like the late 1800s.
That's how you get to get a wife. It's fine. You just
Early
find a woman and you point at her and this one.
From a filmmaking perspective, it is very old school. There's tons of voiceover and narration to it. But like,
I thought it was enjoyable. I had fun with it.
It's a fun, interesting, and if you let yourself think about the deeper themes of it, because it is a very heady science fiction film too, and there's also some awesome special effects, and there's also fights with really creepy guys painted gray with like flashing eyes and crap like that towards the end. So it does have some action, just not like full-blown big-budget action movie that they turned it into in the early 2000s. And then this is an interesting one because this wasn't on my watch list, but one of my coworkers happened to give me a big box of DVDs she was getting rid of, and I kept this one because Nick Cage was in it. And it's The Family Man, which I had no idea anything about this movie, and then I looked, it was a Brett Ratner movie. I'm like, oh, so it's probably fine. Because I feel like most Brett Ratner movies are like mediocre or fine. And Nick Cage definitely makes this movie.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
No doubt.
If him and Tay Leone were not in this movie, I don't think this would be something worth watching.
He's pretty restrained in it.
He's restrained.
Not full on.
Yeah,
tantruming.
Except he... To be fair, Jess did miss at the beginning where he is singing opera music to Luciano Pavarotti, which is like the most Nick Cage thing he did.
But
in
it wasn't
the movie.
a tantrum; it was just a.
He's like, la 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 lemonade, and he's just like dancing around his giant ass closet because he's like a super rich dude.
Is Pavarotti the one who loved women?
Yes.
Okay.
According to the Ron Howard documentary, Pavarotti, Luciano Pavarotti he just loved women.
That's how they explained like
all the affairs.
Tens of affairs.
He just loved women.
That's fine.
Ron Howard didn't make a very objective or biting documentary. I still enjoyed the
It's worth it for
documentary.
his wife's face when she says that, though. She's just kind of like...
She's dead inside, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, she's living a comfortable life. I mean, it sucks. I'm not accusing cheating. I'm just saying, I can see why she wouldn't want to.
She loved Pavarotti, and she wished that he loved less women. I'm pretty sure.
He's just Italian.
But the point is, this is an interesting, like, film of, like, this guy who missed out on potentially having, like, a family and stuff like that by chasing his career, and then has to live this alternate life and try to learn the lesson of, like, maybe a family is a little bit more important than money.
I thought it was pretty objective, though. I mean, the family's not, like, a clean, minor spoilers. I mean, it's, like, realistically having children.
Well, I feel like towards the beginning of the film, you get right off the bat, like, this isn't, like, an ideal life, and he definitely doesn't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have kids. I do take care of them.
But he does learn the positives. But watching Nick Cage go through this movie was priceless. And definitely worth the watch. And I would rewatch it again. I own it.
It was fun.
I physically have it, so I probably will watch. I will watch it again. because I watch all of these. But those are my recommendations, our recommendations for this episode of Welcome to the Wasteland Special Edition. This will be dropping on a Wednesday. I just resist the urge to start Excaliburing right now. Sorry.
I don't like that movie
so this,
much.
huh?
I don't really like that movie.
Well, no, I was talking about the anime, the character Excalibur, that apparently...
I haven't seen that. I was thinking the off-the-wall movie.
Oh, yeah, I love that off-the-wall movie.
It's too much for me. It's sensory overload.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Was it Soul Eater?
Soul Eater.
Where Excalibur, the little white
sword,
dude,
yeah.
he's just, the sword is just like, it was a Thursday. It was a Sunday. It was a Tuesday. And apparently I'm the only person that actually enjoyed that, because when I brought Excalibur up and said I liked him, both my brother and John were like, what? But anyway, that's not the point of this. So this special edition of Welcome to the Wasteland is dropping on a Wednesday this week, and we appreciate you checking it out. And thank you, Jess, for coming on.
Always a pleasure.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.